And now part two of our interview with John DePetro, New England reporter and host of Road Patrol Live, who knows the Karen Reed case better than everybody. Join us now. All right, let's go a little further into the evidence because clearly you know it so well. The really dispositive theory that the defense puts forward that swayed the jury apparently was that this was all a massive conspiracy.
Yes.
And the judge didn't seem to like it. At one point, the judge said something like, there's no indicia of that. There's no real evidence of that. But they got it in. Jackson got it in.
That's right.
And the theory was that there was literally, I count, and I'm reaching for my notes here. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There would be at least 6 agencies that would have to have colluded to hold on to this whole thing. You got 2 police departments. And if you want to count the ATF, because one of the cops that was in the house is actually a Fed, you got the EMTs that arrived. You got the fire department, which the EMTs are likely involved with. You got the DA's office, and you got the medical examiner's office. So you're talking all of these agencies, theoretically, who have nothing against O'Keefe in remotely decided, and by the way, the majority of these people, while it's a small town, I get that, they're not all going to know everybody inside that house that was hanging out drinking. No. Why on earth would all of these people collude to frame Karen Reed?
You know, Paul, it doesn't make sense. You tell me, all your years being a police officer, have you ever heard where there were maybe 15 people involved in a conspiracy and no one breaks? And by the way, when all these witnesses were brought into court, nobody took the fifth. I mean, there had been, also had to appear in front of a federal grand jury. No one took the fifth. It doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me when I first heard the story. There was no motive. The way they tell it, as soon as John O'Keefe, a 6'2" Boston police officer, walked into a house, he was immediately brought down to the basement and basically beaten to death and killed and thrown out on the front lawn, all within 8 minutes. You tell me, I mean, if there was that type of a ruckus, I would think people would hear it. I don't think it takes a long time to, I mean, you would know, beat someone to death with no motive. They've just seen drinking with them. I never understood that. It doesn't seem to make sense. Also, the jury didn't seem to buy it. The biggest thing that sold the conspiracy was the Google search.
Right. So I was about to ask you that. So tease that out for us.
The Google search, the way it was floated out, and this is an interesting dynamic, and there were so many little bits and pieces that were floated out about this case when it first broke open. And Karen Reed, to her credit, Paul, to me, she created a hoax. She created, through going through her and her attorneys, created this story that seems implausible, but so many people have bought into it. As a matter of fact, there's more people that I've run into it seemingly that believe it that don't believe it.
I ran into one last night. She's an experienced prosecutor, and I love her to death, but I wanted to go over the table at her. I couldn't believe it because I knew I could marshal some of this evidence, and then she's looked at me like kind of like, well, maybe. But you're right. If you only skim the surface of this thing, it's very easy to go the other way. But get it. I interrupted.
But the Google search was that Jen McCabe, again, that at 2:27 in the morning, you'd have to believe they said that they had a Google search from Jen McCabe that said at 2:27 a.m. Now, keep in mind, he was let out of her car somewhere around 12:30.
Right.
So 2:27, he's not found until 6 o'clock by the group. Their contention is that at 2:27, while lying in bed, when it was first told to me, they told me she was inside the house. But Jen McCabe, married mother of 4, 5th grade teacher, youth basketball coach, youth soccer coach, she Googled house long to die in the cold, and wondering how long was her friend, Officer John O'Keefe, going to be lying on her brother's front lawn before he froze to death. There was a billboard outside of Gillette Stadium where the Patriots play. There are so many people that glob onto that. What we have since learned is when you, and this was somewhat confusing in the first trial. I think they're going to hone it, celebrate. They even changed their program because they realized it could be confusing. But if someone watching this tonight, if you open up your phone and you go on Safari and you're Googling whatever, New York City crime rates, and then you just place your phone down and then you pick it up a few hours later, the timestamp will be when you looked at New York City crime rates.
Right.
Jen McCabe, who was, again, they were up late. There was no one was going anywhere the next day because of the blizzard. She was Googling about a travel basketball team her daughter was going to be on. She placed down her phone. She was woken up by Karen Reed and Kerry Roberts saying, "We have to go try to find John." She just grabbed her phone off the nightstand. The next time she started using House Long to Die in Cold, which Karen Reed said to her, Google how long,
Google this, right?
Google this, is someone outside before they freeze to death. It was still open because she had been Googling at 227.
And so,
So
would she not, though, have said on the stand that fact pattern and also have to testify to the fact that her phone doesn't lock? Because most of these phones, if you put them down, they're gonna lock, and then the timestamp will reset, is my understanding. And I was lucky. I had a cyber unit. I could just throw this stuff out, and they would dumb it down and tell me. But my understanding would be the phone would automatically lock these days. Did she ever tease that out herself?
I don't know that, but they did have two experts that
Right.
basically said the interpretation of this.
Yeah.
Although, if when they did a printout, you do see 227. I'll give
Yeah.
them that.
Yeah.
They brought up an expert that said, "Oh no, she did that at 227." I'm not convinced this guy's going to testify at the first trial. But Paul, you tell me, with all your years of law enforcement, if police had this, if police had that Jen McCabe was Googling that at 227 in the morning, and it was real evidence, to me, then Karen Reed wouldn't be on trial. They'd be going after Jen
No, they
McCabe,
would have gone.
questioning.
They go right at her. And let me tell you,
They'd go right at her.
15 people involved or whatever they're
Yes,
prognosticating here, that they're postulating that you would just, somebody flips and then that's it. She goes
right.
and you tease the whole thing out and you find out there's a motive. You find out this. You find out that. Of
Sure.
course not. Now, what it really comes down to, under what you just laid out, is it has to be accurate. It
Yes.
realistically has to be accurate that somehow or other the phone stayed open or there is a glitch in the system. And Celebrite, just so people know, Celebrite's an Israeli firm. They're a digital forensic firm. I did a lot of work with them. They are well known. They first hit the sort of radar screen relative to the San Bernardino terrorism case because they couldn't get into the Apple phone, and then a
That's
subgroup did
right.
it and everything else. But the bottom line is they are considered to be real cutting edge forensic technology when it comes to dumping phones and things like that. These days, I think they do it with software. In the old days, we had a device. So it was like a suitcase. But, that has to be explained here because
Yes.
that is very dispositive evidence the other way. That is good evidence for the defense because if Jen McCabe, who theoretically had nothing to do with this, is
Right.
Googling how long to survive, and I know she misspelled the how is long to survive
Exactly.
when you're in the cold before the body is found. Obviously, if you're the prosecution, that's a problem. So you got to get rid of that. I want to tease out one more thing
Go
before
ahead.
I ask you about some of the hullabaloo around the case. The dog. That's another bizarre aspect of this whole thing.
Yep.
And part of the defense's theory is that not only did he, that is O'Keefe, enter the house immediately getting beaten to death by this gang of people who were, for whatever reason, lying in wait, but that part of the assault was that this quote unquote vicious German Shepherd took part in the assault and that O'Keefe's body displays evidence of the assault from a dog, scratches from a dog, etc. And then
Yep.
there's this thing about pig DNA. So
Yeah.
this thing just gets stranger. I mean, this is really some case, man. So lay that out for us.
The pig DNA, they believe that was John O'Keefe was having a hamburger, and that's where the contamination could come in. I should mention that there was no dog DNA, and
Right.
the dog Chloe, who was rehomed, by the way, and that fueled the conspiracy, had
Sure.
attacked another dog. So Brian Albert, his wife Nicole, they decided to rehome the dog.
Right.
But as far as the belief is that he had a glass in his hand, John
Hmm.
O'Keefe, and he is seen leaving the waterfall bar with a glass, and
And
he's
broken glass. Not to interrupt, the broken glass is found at the scene along with the broken glass from the tail light. So there
yes.
is that. So that checks out. Go ahead. Sorry.
So the belief is that he possibly smashed her back tail light. So now you have a jagged tail light,
Right.
and when she gunned it backwards, he put his arm up to just an instinct, and that's what caused it. They have brought in experts, and experts have said that those are not Those are not dog bites. They're not consistent with dog bites. The defense did find this woman who was living on the West Coast, who was retired, and she agreed to come in. And she said, "Yeah, I'll testify that that's dog bites." The prosecution was then questioning her again about some of her qualifications. I think if and the judge is going to let her testify. That's
Yeah.
this woman Marie. But the thing about it, Paul, is I don't. It doesn't seem to be an expert. And when Hank Brennan said, "I can find you the dog, and you can examine the dog, and you can examine the jaws of the dog, and you can examine and then try to match it," she had no interest in seeing the dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
The element of the dog bites, I admit, when you see the arm, it just kind of feeds into the conspiracy.
It looks
But
like
people,
scratches. Yeah.
it does
Yeah.
look like scratches. What people should also know is Karen Reed leaked those autopsy photos.
Yeah.
That was in discovery from the defense. She leaked that to put that out there with the defense. I don't believe. I don't believe they never had one witness that had him inside the house. I don't believe those were dog bites because he was never inside the house. He was never attacked by the dog. I would think if you're a dog expert and you had an opportunity to examine the dog, Chloe, you would jump at it like, great, this is our moment. We're going to match it up. They have no interest in examining the dog.
And look, Jackson posited after they found the pig DNA. His theory of that was, oh, first of all, this is indicia of dog bites and dog scratches, and the pig DNA comes from the fact that the dog must have been eating dog treats that had some sort of pork residue or pork product in them, and there you go. Despite the fact that there's no dog DNA, so
None.
you got the DNA from something the dog ate, but you don't have the dog DNA. Ridiculous. Like, you got to just say to yourself, my God, what was the jury thinking? But you raise, and that's going to bring us sort of into our last piece here that you have to talk about. The fact that she leaked the autopsy photos takes us right into the fact that there was a trial around the trial, so to speak, right? There was
There was.
all of this circus atmosphere around it. And in fact, you had another sort of tangential case going on at the same time that was a collateral case, for lack of a better term, involving this guy, Turtle Boy.
Yes.
And
What Karen,
go
what
ahead.
they did was they found a local blogger. By the way, I that summer had communication with the defense, and I just never bought it. I never bought that there was no motive. They kept changing different parts of the story. I
Sure.
didn't buy it, but they were looking for people to kind of put her story out there.
They were looking for
But
proxies,
they were,
and they
and
found
what
this guy.
she did, and as you know, the prosecution they can't, respond to all of
Of
this.
course.
She was leaking discovery evidence, and so this is what I find is the telltale sign is they did an interview. The Karen Reed defense, Alan Jackson, David Yannetti, Karen Reed, they did an interview with Boston Common Magazine. And the writer there, Gretchen Voss, said, "Have you been in touch with this blogger?" And they said, "No, we don't know him. Boy, this
Right.
guy's digging up all this stuff." She interviewed Turtle Boy and said, "Have you been in touch with the defense?" And he said, "No, I just keep digging this stuff up." When they then took his phones and devices
Right.
from intimidating witnesses, they found that he spoke to Karen Reed 189 times
Incredible.
over a short period of time. Now, Paul, you tell me. I mean, I'm pretty tight with my friends and family. There's no one that's talked to me 189 times in a short period of time. So then you have to question why did they not tell the truth about their
Sure.
communication? They would say, "We're going to make a court filing on this." He would race down to the courthouse and then post it. And when the rest of the media was slow to react to it, it wasn't as if he was publishing nonsense. He was posting defense motions that they were putting in. But the bottom line is there is communication that shows that Karen Reed was basically directing him and even communicating, say, you can post this, don't post that. Here's where the McCabe's live. Here's where this person lives. She was basically sicking him on them. And then with him came a mob. And
Right.
as much as people may say, hey, free speech, well, suddenly your neighbors aren't talking to you, and suddenly people are filming you. And Paul, all your years in law enforcement, if you had, and I try to tell this to people, if you had the leader of a motorcycle gang and he was involved with a homicide, and then suddenly the witnesses that saw it, they're being followed, there's people in their driveway, there's hangups on the phone, there's people showing up at their workplace. Come on, that's intimidating after a while.
And in fact, he gets arrested, correct?
Yes, he was arrested. He did 2 months in jail. So a big part of this was Karen Reed felt that if she really leaned on the witnesses, they kept telling me this is never going to trial. This will never go to trial. They're going to drop it. It did go to trial, but they have made life hell for these witnesses. And, everywhere they go, and even Trooper Michael Proctor, uh,
Oh, I can only
he
imagine. Now that
he
he's been
was
fired,
fired.
right?
Yes, because of the federal probe, they went into the cloud and they saw that he was communicating with he was in a group chat with some childhood friends. He was
Right,
talking to his sister about the case.
right,
Now, Paul, you spend more time around police than me. I don't know a lot of police that speak very fondly of many of the people they're investigating or say,
right,
so and so's a killer, but boy, they're a swell guy or a
right.
swell gal. So, but it became a huge deal, and it was a distraction for the Massachusetts State Police. So it's had ramifications. But more point that's really important: at any time, Karen Reed could have said, "Listen, John O'Keefe's family's off limits. The mother's off limits. The brother's off limits. The McCabe's are off limits." She will never do that. The mother, John O'Keefe's mother, Peg O'Keefe, who I know, she's lost two adult children now, her daughter and then
Right,
John.
right.
She's booed going into the courthouse. Paul
Yeah,
O'Keefe is booed going into the courthouse.
yeah. I've
It
seen they
is,
get cursed at. I've seen some of
they
the
do.
footage. It's disgraceful.
Oh my God. And just picture normal life. You're going to go to the grocery store. There's someone filming you. Someone's walking, following you, filming you to your car. People keep driving past your house. People are showing up at your children's youth games wearing free Karen Reed hats.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
It is.
It is utterly bizarre. I don't understand the obsessive interest in getting her off the hook because look, you and I are on common ground here. I'm going to give my opinion. I think that she should be convicted. I
Yes.
don't know about the intentional murder. I would sleep well at night knowing that she got convicted of manslaughter. I would think at the least that unless there's other evidence that's going to come to light, but under the facts I have, I would lean manslaughter charge. But that said, there is certainly enough evidence to justify the fact. Look, they got the indictment, right? So they're well over the hump for probable
Right.
cause, and yet people are behaving this way towards the family of the
Ah,
victim, and nobody has alleged in any way, shape, or form that John O'Keefe in any way that deserved what happened to him. The guy was taking care of his sister's two kids. He's a
he
quality
was.
guy. And so
Yes.
to be doing this to his mother and to and the McCabe family,
Ah,
again, I've seen the footage. I wondered all along when I was seeing some of this stuff and when I saw this Turtle Boy character get arrested and when I was catching up on the case, I was wondering why they had not put it together to rearrest her as a conspirator to
right.
do witness intimidation. Because when you have all those phone calls and he's intimidating witnesses, it looked to me like she was pointing him at these
Yes.
witnesses. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, Paul, you're 100% right. There was a grand jury. I don't know. It could still be going on. It certainly seems as though, I mean, she was directing him to go after
There was
these
a grand
specific
jury
people.
on that charge.
There was.
There
Yeah,
was. Is that right? I had not heard that.
yeah.
So
They
maybe at
did
some
not
point
bring it
here,
back.
we're going to find out that either they let it go or, in fact, she actually is under a second indictment
Yes.
relative to the witness intimidation. And that looks to me to be pretty strong, although from what I've seen, this Turtle Boy guy is never going to flip on her. So, but I think there were texts. Am I wrong? There were text messages between them?
There's a lot of communication. They were
Right.
even using one of those, it's
Yeah,
called
it was,
Signal. It's an app
yeah,
where you can
Signal, which is
communicate secretly.
very,
Yes.
very tough to get a hold of that stuff,
Yeah.
Signal. So, but on the other hand, if you can get into his phone and jailbreak his phone, as the saying goes, which they did get his phone, they may be able to retrieve that stuff. Listen, we're out of time, but I want to thank you. But before we go, take us out with this. What is your prediction for the second trial?
It's going to be a very different trial. Hank Brennan is very skilled. They're going to be very cautious also on jury selection because there's been so much publicity.
Right.
I think it's going to be a tighter case. I believe he is going to get a conviction because he's going to hammer home. He's going to simplify the case. In this case, for anyone that's watching who's unfamiliar, it's actually pretty simple. She hit him and she left him. And that's it. That's what happened. And everything else is a distraction and noise. I believe they will convict her this time.
John, you and I are on the same page, and I am heartened to hear that Brennan really has his arms around this because
He
my
does.
understanding is the first time around they had resource issues and everything else. Not that the prosecutor did a bad job or anything like that, but just had a lot thrown at him. He was dealing with this
Yeah.
very high-powered team, and I
Yep.
think that they just got a little overwhelmed in the court.
They were.
So I think this time around, I agree. I think it's going to be very different. Is it going to be? Is it going to be televised?
It is going to be televised.
And
Yeah.
people are going to be riveted. So we're looking at either 1 April or 25th of April. Will you come
Right.
back and give us some commentary as it goes on?
100%. Oh yeah.
That'll be a
Definitely.
lot of fun. Now, where can
Be my
people
honor.
find you outside of
You
this?
can find me DePetro.com, my website, DEPTRO.com. It's all my links to all my social media, whether it's Facebook or X or TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, and then also all the links to the radio. So you can find me there.
Outstanding. Guys, if you're following this trial, and it feels to me like everybody is, I mean, everybody I talk to has an opinion on it. You couldn't do better than to follow John on this case because nobody knows it the way he does. That's why he's
Thank you,
here
Paul.
today, and that's why we're so grateful to him. Our thanks to John for joining us today on the Ops Desk. Everybody out there, once again, I am Paul Morrow. Thank you for having us today with you, and in the meantime, please stay safe.